So welcome everyone, and a specific welcome to Andy Frost. Andy is the director of Share Jesus International. We're really pleased to have him. I heard, of course, directly from Andy about his ministry and what he's doing. Really excited for us to reflect on the mission model that Share Jesus International offer us as a church in London. They are doing a lot of opportunities that we can get engaged with, but specifically the academy. I really looking forward to hear more and how we can apply that into our church, how we can get engaged with something that will help cultivate a culture of sharing Jesus and evangelism and taking the church where the church can be effective in the community. I'm going to let Andy talk more about what is Share Jesus International and what is the work he's doing and introduce himself in much more details. But now here it is for you, Andy. Tell us what it is all about and what is this Emmaus program.
Great. Well, good to be with you guys this morning. Thank you for having me on the call. And thank you for what you do week in, week out, serving across London. It's just a brilliant role you play. So thank you for being pastors and serving that way. So my name is Andy Frost. I'm on a charity called Share Jesus. People often ask, what do we do? We share Jesus. It's kind of a clever name. And done a whole variety of things over a number of years. We also run some things kind of pan-London with the London Mission Collective as well. But our heart really is for the gospel and how we communicate the gospel. I wanted to share about the Emmaus project today, but just the first kind of question, first of all, when you think about evangelism, what is the first thing that you picture? If you think about that term, what do you kind of picture in terms of ministry and ideas and what you might do? Because generally, I feel there are three main ways of understanding it. For some people, they think predominantly it's about detached street work. It's being out on the street, doing things, cold contact, being out there sharing our faith. For others, it's much more about a kind of culture of invitation. So it's events, it could be in stadiums or Christmas carol services, whatever else might be, or like an alpha course. It's some kind of an event or a course that you run and invite people to come along too. Or the third is, but actually, well, how do we empower people to share their faith in everyday life? Well, the truth is all three of these things. And what we've discovered in the last number of years, we've done lots of training across the UK and particularly in London, looking at these three things. And what we discovered, we often go to a church, we do one of these kind of projects, we do something on the street with them, we do something, a kind of seminar or workshop. It would go very well. But once we left, nothing really shifted and changed. So we began this project a couple of years ago now called the Emmaus Project. The idea being, could we journey with the church over 2 years to help them explore mission and evangelism? So we had a few pilot churches, which included Black Horse Road Baptist Church, in Waltham Forest and Teddington Baptist Church. And they were both two of our kind of guinea pigs in that first phase. And now working with about 20 different churches across the UK, helping to explore how they can do mission and evangelism. The project is really about this. It's about walking alongside a church for 2 years to help making disciples central to your church's culture and practice, aka guilt-free evangelism. Often we feel very guilty about we should be doing more, what should we be doing? We miss out that actually evangelism can be fun. We get to participate in what God is doing as we share that good news. And third of all, that we all have a part to play. Every member of our congregation can be involved in some way in sharing and communicating their faith. And what we do as a charity, we come alongside churches. We love a local church as we journey with them. We pray for you and with you and for you. We help equip you with different resources and ideas. We help you discern what God wants to do through you. Sometimes having an outside pair of eyes to come in and see what you're already doing and look for actually, are some things here that God is doing that maybe aren't quite so obvious as you're kind of buried down in what you're doing. And about lovingly nagging you to tell you the truth. So actually, when we say we're going to do something, it doesn't quite work out. Well, why hasn't that worked out? It's almost that kind of nagging to see where we're going to go toward in this 2 years. And finally, to really encourage and to celebrate with you what God wants to do through you. With these kind of 20 churches so far I've been working with, been really encouraging seeing people come to the faith. Many churches we're working with have been almost kind of static or in decline, and we've helped them kind of grow through this process. What we do is kind of two things. We look at the scaffolding. So if you ever had work done in your home, you have to get some scaffolding in to fix the roof or whatever it is. It's very expensive stuff. But you reorganize the scaffolding according to what you want to try and achieve. And so for the scaffolding for us is thinking about the things that you do as a local church. whether that be prayer groups, whether that be a food bank, whether that be a youth club, thinking through what you're already doing and how can you begin to position those things to help people go on a journey of faith moving forwards. The second thing is culture. How can we really help the culture of the church to become much more missionally minded, looking for opportunities to share faith in the everyday? I want to share two resources with you today, which I might think might be helpful. So whether they want to do the Emmaus journey or not, these two resources could be helpful in helping you think through your locality and what mission looks like. The first one is around these 7 questions. We found that over the years that often we can think evangelism is one aspect of the church, but really it needs to impact everything that we're doing in the local church context. So we've kind of defined these 7 questions, 7 areas to look at. The 7 questions are here. First of all, celebrating. How good is the church at celebrating positive interactions with the community and stories of people coming to faith? The second one is inspiring. How is the church at inspiring the congregation to share Jesus? A third is around equipping. How effective is your church at equipping people to share their story, explain the gospel, and invite others to make next steps towards Jesus? Praying. How are you as a congregation at praying for people to come to faith? Engaging. How effectively does your church engage and serve the community? Inviting. How effective as a church are you at inviting the wider community to events? And lastly, discipling. How effective is your church at helping people, seekers, and new believers become mature followers of Jesus? So these 7 questions we've identified and kind of 7 different areas help you work out how does mission and evangelism flow through every aspect of church life rather than just being a bolt on the side. So what we normally do is have this little diagram here. You might have seen a spider diagram before, where we normally come to the church and get people in the church to mark themselves 0 to 5 in these 7 different areas and to think about where they think they fit as a local church. So as we do this, this kind of tool helps us to reflect on where we are and helps us to have kind of deeper kind of conversations about where we could be going forwards. So I often use this tool initially when we start the journey with Emmaus, and every kind of 3 to 6 months we look at it again and see how we're tracking, how we're moving forwards. But if you're not going to do Emmaus, it's still a helpful resource, I think, to think through as a church leadership team or as a whole congregation, where are we strong and where can we do with some more input or ideas? So the first thing we do is we kind of score each area from 0 to 5, and we try and be honest rather than optimistic. And we try and have examples to kind of think through kind of what that could look like in our contexts. And then we try and score the overall culture of the church, not just a single event or a program. The second part of this is discussing each area. Then normally when we're hosting with a group, a leadership team, we're going to talk about, well, why did you score that and why did you score this? And having some honest kind of conversation from different points of view. And it's really helpful that as a group, we often approach things differently. And we love these 3 questions. What is working well? What evidence supports our score? And what is one next step we could take? The third part of the program is in identifying some patterns. So what you often discover is that if you, for example, got high inspiration, you're very inspiring about the gospel, but people aren't feeling equipped, then often we've got this sense of I should be sharing my faith, but I don't know how to, and they actually feel guilty rather than being encouraged. Or perhaps you've got a very high capacity for prayer, but you're not really engaging in the community. So then how the church has a strong inward focus, but limited engagement with those outside the church. And the fourth part is just agreeing your next steps. Not trying to do everything at once, but looking at this diagram and saying, where are we strong? And where are some of our weaker areas? And where perhaps we focus in this season to become more intentional in doing that? So this is the diagram again. And what I'd love you to do is give it a go at scoring now. Is that all right? So if you kind of picture your church context, you haven't got to kind of share your results at the end. But I'd love you, first of all, maybe we've got a pen and paper or your phone there to write down some notes. The first one about celebrating. How are you as a church, do you think, at celebrating positive interactions with the community? How are you at celebrating stories of people coming to faith? That could be things like a baptism service. It could be mission updates. Score yourself 0 to 5 on how you are at celebrating. The second one is inspiring. How is your church at inspiring the congregation to share Jesus? That could be through sermons you speak, through kind of sermon series, or it could be through sharing testimony. But how is the church at inspiring the congregation to share their faith? Again, 0 to 5. The third one is around equipping. How effective is your church at equipping people to share their story, explain the gospel, and invite others to take steps towards Jesus? So, how effective are you as church at equipping the congregation to share their faith and put their faith into words? Again, score 0 to 5. The fourth one is praying. How are you as a congregation at praying for people to come to faith? That kind of could be corporate moments in house groups. It could be a 24/7 prayer room. It could be praying regularly for people to come to faith, whatever it might be. But how are you as a church at cultivating a kind of culture of prayer for mission? I think we often pray about some very important big issues. We can pray for politics. We can pray for England not to get knocked out in semi-finals. But actually, when it comes to prayer, how are we praying for people specifically to come to faith? The next one down is engaging. How effectively does your church engage and serve the local community? So that could be a food bank, it could be a debt center, it could be a family fun day once a year, a kids club. How effectively are you as a church at engaging and serving the local community? Number 6, for your scoring, is inviting. How effective as a church are you at inviting the wider church to events? That could be a special church service, it could be Christianity Explored or Alpha, it could be some kind of other club you do during the week. How is the culture of invitation in your church? Again, 0 to 5. And the final one is discipling. How effective is your church at helping seekers and new believers become mature followers of Jesus? Have you got some kind of plan or idea for how you help those new people to explore more the Christian faith and become committed disciples? So we're just kind of stop for a minute there and just kind of, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and just kind of share anyone score high or particularly low on that? How have you found that diagram? Is it helpful to kind of see where you're strong and where you're weak? I think often we can think, are we good or not at mission evangelism? This gives you kind of 7 areas to focus upon and kind of breaks it down into some smaller chunks. And often we can be strong at a couple of them, but maybe not strong at all of them. So anyone want to share any quick reflections having seen that? If you do, just unmute yourself and feel free to share.
I don't mind sharing.
Yeah, go for it.
I'd like to say thank you. I think that we are pretty aware of all these areas, and I've scored myself probably the highest one is celebrating. And I
Brilliant.
think we try all of these, but it's trying to get people to do it though. How do you,
Yeah.
we're doing it. That's one way of saying at least we're aware and we're doing it. But
Yeah.
how do you get people to
Yeah.
move on and be more than just attenders?
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe serving on a Sunday, because that's probably
Yeah.
the big problem for us. But I would say we do all of this regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Would you score yourself threes and fours normally, or twos and threes and fours, or
I think 4 for celebrating, and the rest
Yeah.
of it is like threes and twos. I mean, I
Yeah.
just can't. I mean, we're doing it. They're
Yeah.
very, very small, just slow results, but
Yeah.
constantly seeing people get saved, trying our hardest to look after them,
Brilliant.
always out on the streets, doing
Brilliant.
food bank, doing big breakfasts. But it's just very, really, I don't know.
It's often hard,
Catello's
but
sitting there, the lady sitting below me, I don't know if
yeah.
it's all viewed the same.
Yeah,
She does a lot of this delivery.
Brilliant.
we
Brilliant. Oh, good stuff.
we are from the same church. I scored
Yeah.
all of them 4 to ourselves. Georgina was
Brilliant.
a little bit
Brilliant.
less than
Brilliant.
4, but yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, how that's helpful as a tool then to go back and to kind of think about in those 7 different areas and to explore what it might look like. We have created a whole host of resources to explore these kind of things as well. I just want to show you one more thing before we're going to go into some more kind of conversation about Emmaus specifically, and that's our faith sharing research we've done a couple of years ago. So again, just might be helpful again to think through this in your context for your church. I had lots of theories having done mission with churches over the last 25 years now. And so we created a questionnaire and got several hundred Christians to fill in this questionnaire to work out how do they approach faith sharing. Not just church pastors, not just evangelists, but people in the church themselves. And what we discovered that there were 4 tensions. And I found these 4 tensions to be really helpful to explore because they help us think when we're talking through mission and evangelism as a local church to explore actually we often come from different points of view. So these tensions start with everyday attitudes and behaviors of real people, real Christians. They're not an idealistic theology or where we want everyone to be. And there are some tensions that you've got to try and resolve, but these tensions just need to be held. There's there, and that's okay. The first tension is this, is that some people approach evangelism and mission as about a moment. How does someone come to faith in a moment? And we're looking for that moment. How do we help someone to say yes to Jesus there and then? Others approach it much more in terms of a journey. So I want to help this person on the next step of discovering slightly more of who Christ is, of discovering slightly more who they might be in God's eyes. So moment and journey. Now it's both and, but often our evangelism, how we're approaching as a church, tends to lean one way or the other way. So if it's all about the moment, we often hold events, hands in the air. This is the moment you're going to say yes. If it's more of a journey, you might say, well, actually, we're going to journey and help people gradually to explore different ways about the Christian faith. So the first tension, is it about a moment or is it a journey? It's both. We have a leaning either way. The second one is it my personal responsibility or is it a corporate responsibility? These might seem quite obvious, but the research often shows obvious things. The first thing is it about me personally? So my neighbours, do I share my faith with my neighbours? That's what I've got to do. It's my personal commitment, having experienced who God is in my life. Or is mission something that I do as a corporate activity? So when the whole church goes out in the street, we go and do that. Or when the whole church does a litter pick, we do that. Or when the whole church runs Alpha, we do that. We'll support church corporate activity. Or is it about just me personally doing my own personal faith sharing? Now, again, it's both and, but generally we have a leaning one way or the other, people in our churches. Some of them will think it's specifically about them or their neighbour, their friend, their colleague. Others will think, no, it's about an organised activity I do with the local church. The third tension is a starting point. Do we begin with the message or do we begin with the person? And again, both the truths examples are both in scripture. The message would say, well, how do I, as quickly and as succinctly as possible, get to the core of the gospel? So how do I going to get past the small talk and get into it? This is what you need to hear. This is the gospel message, life transforming message. Or do you begin with the person? So rather than coming with how do I communicate that, you're coming saying, actually, what is God already doing in this person's life? What questions have they already got? What are some of their fears and their hopes and their dreams? How might that begin to be a way to unpack or share more of what the Christian faith is all about? So often we approach it either with a message or we approach it with the person. But again, this tension happens in churches. And the fourth, this one here, which is very common, I think, is do we share our faith in words and the things that we speak? Or do we share our faith in our actions and the way that we love people? Now, again, both is true, but some of us have a leaning. Some of us much more about, actually, it has to be about the word. We'll go and preach the word. It doesn't matter too much about the other stuff. Just get the word out there. But for others, no, it's much about how do we really love people and how do we help them to know that they are cared for by a compassionate, loving God? Again, there's that tension there. Is it mainly in words? Is it mainly in action? It's both and, but the average person has a leaning one way or the other way. So these four tensions, just unpacking them with a leadership team, can be a helpful way to begin to explore how different people in a room approach faith sharing. And what we tend to do is do a little quiz. There's a QR code there for if you want to do it later on. And the kind of QR code then helps you to kind of discern, using these four kind of tensions, we've worked out 7 different profiles or personas or ways in which we generally approach faith sharing. And so when you do the quiz, you get this little kind of download. You can download how you approach it. But here are the kind of 6 different ways people approach it. So you based on those 4 different foundations, those 4 different tensions. There are some people who are intentional disciplers. They really love journeying with people. They see evangelism and discipleship as the same thing. So they want to kind of come alongside somebody and journey with them over time. Quite a few pastors have that. They see that almost sense of a journey with people. Then there are the life sharers, people who've got a really powerful testimony of how God's impacted their life. What they love to do is just share their story. Hear my story. Hear what God has done in my life. Then all the team players. Those who are not really into kind of doing faith sharing by themselves. But if the church is doing something, they'll get involved. So if the church is going to run some kind of mission activity at Christmas, Shine Your Light, for example, they'll get involved with that. If the church is going to be involved in running a debt centre, then they'll get involved in that. They'll jump in and get involved. But they're very much team players who do things as a corporate activity, not by themselves as a personal thing. The fourth group are the open connectors. They live out their faith, but they don't really want to kind of force their faith on people. So they're just open to being asked questions. So they won't ever really start a conversation, but they'll live out their faith. And when somebody asks them, they're very happy to share. But they would never be kind of intentional in kind of starting the conversation. That feel a bit too pushy for them. The fifth group are the compassion revealers, who believe that actions speak louder than words. They are really compassionate people who really showcase God's love in a very practical way. And what they don't want to do is offend somebody or upset somebody. They want to know that they're loved, but they are often concerned that if I begin to speak or share, I might actually offend them or upset them in some way. And the final group are the Bible revealers. That's kind of the traditional evangelists. The gospel message is urgent. They believe they need to get it out there as fast and as best they can. And if they have to ruffle some feathers, they will, because the gospel is important. The gospel is urgent. People need to hear what the gospel is all about. If we do the online quiz, you discover kind of which one is your general way of approaching faith sharing. Now, it will be different in different contexts, but it gives you a general way of how you approach it. And all 6 of these approaches have something to celebrate. There is something beautiful about each of these 6 different ways of approaching how we share our faith. But also, each of them has a challenge, something we can become more intentional in trying to do. For example, the open connectors often don't want to start a conversation. They feel it's a bit icky. But if you can help them to work out what one thing might you drop into conversation, that could be something of a game changer for them. So just saying at the weekend, I went to church, when a friend asks you how your weekend was. There's simple things you can drop in to become more open to that. And often what we do with the church does a survey, and we can work out and plot who the congregation are in the church. So you get an idea, actually, who are the different people? How do they approach faith sharing? Then how can we best then work out what are the best things to be doing as a church body to really encourage them, to support them, to mentor them in sharing their faith? But also, what are the right kind of activities as well? So I was working with one church, the evangelism team were really into doing events. When we surveyed the church, we discovered that most of the church didn't do events as evangelism, it was much more about personal, relational stuff. So when the evangelism team were getting frustrated and no one was coming to their events, it was because everyone in the congregation approached their faith sharing in a different way to them. So understanding these differences can be a helpful way to explore what is the most appropriate way of faith sharing as a church. I'll do a couple more quick slides and I'll have questions. So with the Emmaus journey, then we unpack these models and others to help you really explore what it looks like in your local church. And we do 3 levels, bronze, silver and gold, where it's this 2-year journey exploring how we kind of come alongside you to help you think about mission evangelism. Sometimes we work with the pastor and a small team, other times we work with the leadership team, but it's really thinking through how can we, in those 7 different areas, become more intentional? What might we put into place to become more proactive in those different areas? And how can we really discern who's in the congregation already and how we best release them into that calling to share their faith? So there's bronze, silver and gold levels there at different costs per year. And that involves us kind of, if it's the gold level, coming and helping and being more there in person, preaching and things as well. And then bronze is the kind of online version, which we do as well. I've got a video there, I'll just show very briefly, kind of explain something a bit more. I'll give you 5 tools and I'll stop. So here we go. Share Jesus International run the Emmaus project, coming alongside local churches over 2 years, to help them work how they can share their Christian faith, both relevantly and faithfully. Here are some of their stories.
This is the first time a team of people will come together, give us tools to help us share Jesus in our everyday. And I think that's been really well received by the church, and we're still on a journey together. And what I really like about it is that it's analytical. So at the beginning, we take a stock about where we are as a church on different sort of metrics. And what's been good is throughout the journey, we're on the 2nd year now, we've seen how we've made progress on each of those metrics, and it's been amazing.
So the Emmaus project is an exciting thing that we got to be a part of. We have seen our church grow, and we have seen that because people have got the heart of sharing Jesus. It's been phenomenal seeing people have the courage and the boldness to share Jesus in their normal walks of life.
The reason we chose to do the Emmaus project was because the church has got a real heart for revival. But the reality is we haven't seen the church growth that we were really looking for. We've seen people who were on the edges of the church drawn into the core to the point where one of those individuals is now leading children's work in our church. I think we've made a real shift to be an intergenerational church as we have remodeled how we do our services and therefore who we attract.
Coming out of COVID, we had an ambition to reach the community, but we didn't know how to take it forward. It's been really encouraging working with Share Jesus International team. They've helped us uncover skills and talents we didn't know we had. They've given us a really rigid framework in order to organise events, to understand our community. One of the things Marcus often talks about is invite people to carol services, and we did just that. And as someone became a Christian, Alan became a Christian, and he's a really great member of our church.
So if you are thinking about doing the Emmaus project, you need to do it. It is the most phenomenal thing. It is engaging. It is fun. It brings all generations together, and it will change the life of your church. Please get in touch.
I would encourage any church that's considering it to have a conversation kind of with the team to really explore how the project can help you.
Share Jesus International, through the Emmaus project, have worked with lots of churches in lots of contexts. So they've got really valuable practical experience that they can share with you. And it cuts down a lot of time, it cuts down a lot of wasted effort, and it means you can do things for your community in really quick time.
Don't wait, just get in touch with the Emmaus project and do it.
So if you've been inspired, there you go, just kind of a couple of testimonies really. So just kind of 5 quick things that might be helpful. We put together this resource called Sharing Jesus 10 years ago originally. We did it last year. We did it across London as part of the Crossing London kind of mission. What it does is it gives you a whole wide range of ways to start chats about God for helping Christians to think about that. And it looks really at, first of all, how do we start conversations? Second of all, how do we begin to explain the gospel in words that make sense? Third of all, what are the next steps on someone's journey going forwards? And fourthly, what are some of the difficult questions that often we're afraid of being asked? So that's one resource. It's like £5 a copy, but you can bulk buy it for like £2 a copy if you want it for congregation. Second thing is prompt. It's been a real game changer for churches. Very simply, it's having a question a week, which you ask from the front. There's a video and some stuff you can do in small groups too. But basically, the idea is you have a question each week and you read out that question and the whole church has a go at doing it. And then the following week, you share how you've got on. And some of the challenges are really simple. The things like, who could you text a Bible verse to? Others are more challenging. It's who could you pray for in person? So a different challenge each week to help you think through what you might try and do during the week. And just try and encourage the church, the culture to shift as people each and every week look for opportunities for how can I share my faith? What might God be prompting me to do? The third thing is resource here, looking at how we connect social action and faith sharing. I think it's brilliant how the church serves practically so many people in their communities. And the danger is we haven't really worked out then what is the appropriate way to share our faith as we're coming alongside different people. This resource begins to look at some of the barriers, some of the practical ways of getting around that. The fourth thing is a little resource called Living Acts, which goes for the Book of Acts. It's available on YouVersion as a kind of reading thing. But you can always get the hard copy copies as well from us. And basically, it takes people through the Book of Acts. And again, each day there's a reflection on the chapter from Acts. And there's then a kind of practical challenge of what you might try and do to help you think missionally again, trying to get that kind of cultural shift to take place. And finally, we host an annual conference called Ecclesia each March. And this year's theme was called Confronting the Discipleship Deficit. And a guy called Joe Wharton, a researcher, pulled together the last 15 years worth of research on discipleship and what's working, what isn't working in local churches. And it's pulled together into a little resource, some of the kind of highlights there as well. So there's also available on our website. And finally, this is our kind of our QR code and our website. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can do. That's a bit of a story really of how Emmaus works and what we do as a charity. Hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Andy. So we're back. Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy, for the presentation. And well, you raised a lot of questions. I'm going to, before let you guys think about your questions that you might want to ask, I'm going to just ask a couple of questions to Andy. Does the Emmaus program requires particular size of a church. Like sometimes it's very comprehensive what you said, how you assess where the church is and looking into how active they are in sharing their gospel, what type of personality and model or comfort zone they are function in them. Would it be overwhelming for a small church, or what it is the size that it could be working well?
So we've worked with churches so far from about 30 people to about 300, I guess, those kind of ballparks. So if your church is in that kind of a remit, it would work. One of the guys who saw the testimony there, they were down to maybe about 35, 40 after COVID in their church, and they were kind of wondering, is there even a future? And we kind of came alongside them for 2 years, and now they're back. They've really grown through that process. It's been really encouraging. So yeah. So no, for any size really will work with anybody. Yeah, if they've got a heart for the gospel, and it's really about you meeting guys and working out, can you work with us or not? And us meeting you and just checking it's going to work practically. But it really is about a partnership. But it can be any size church.
Thank you, Andy. The other thing is that sometimes the churches have this idea, okay, we're going to partner with Share Jesus International. They will do it for us. These 2 years will multiply our church and it will become big somehow. And I wonder, what does it take from within the church? Like you explained clearly how Share Jesus International will come alongside and impact and empower and release and affect the church to go about mission. But what does it need from the church so that they don't have that type of, it will be done for them?
Yeah, I think first of all, the average church, it won't kind of completely, you won't have hundreds of people turning up next Sunday to come to a church service, but it does begin to change the culture of the church, and people do come to faith through it. I think every church so far we work with has seen people come to faith, and previously some of those churches had nobody come to faith for many years, so it's been a kind of game changer for them in kind of setting their trajectory going forwards. We aren't going to do everything for you. We'll come and speak sometimes for you, just in training for you. We can do like the Sharing Jesus course with you or people as well. But really, it's about helping you think through your context, what God's already doing, and how you can be more intentional in the different areas to think about it all. So what we'll do really, we'll come alongside, we'll kind of coach you, help you talk you through it, help you reflect upon your practices already. And what we don't want to say is just do more stuff. It isn't about doing more, but it's about actually working out what has God already given you and how can you become slightly more intentional in those things that already exist. So if you already have, I don't know, a luncheon club for the elderly, or you already have a parent and toddler group, how can you use those things intentionally to become slightly more focused in sharing faith without having to restart new things? Often we'll do it as part of the process. We'll help you try and discern in this season, who are you trying to reach? And the danger is that most churches say they're trying to reach everybody, which is great, and we do. But actually, trying to reach everybody at the same time is actually reach nobody because we haven't really thought through who we're trying to connect with. So it's that prayerful thing of discerning what is God saying in this season for us to try and do, and how do we begin to think about that practically.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Anyone would like to ask a question, please let me know. Just unmute yourself, of course, if you're going to do that. And quickly, before I ask another one. Go ahead, Dave. You're muted.
When you come in and get involved with the church, and this might vary according to whether it's bronze, silver or gold, what sort of regularity of contact is there? Is that leadership meetings? Is that church members meetings? Is it services? What does that kind of look like in practice?
So it varies lots of the kind of bronze, silver, and gold. Basically, the idea is that kind of covers our time for the costings we charge for it. So the gold, much more in person. So I'll be more coming to leadership meetings with you guys, preaching 3 or 4 times a year, often doing workshops after the church service with the congregation already in place. It could be doing something midweek over 3 nights, doing the Sharing Jesus course, those kind of practical things. So very much kind of being there with you every 3 months at least. And then for the bronze, it'll be less in person, but more regular Zoom calls and touching base there really. And then the silver is somewhere in between the two. But each church has been a bit different really. So we haven't kind of got a set way of doing it. So for some people, they want to work with the whole congregation if it's a small church. For others, they say, can you work with our leadership team? For others, they say, actually, we want to set up a mission team to do mission. Can you work with them? So we think it's important the pastor is involved because otherwise it can go from a different direction. And it's got to be the whole ship moving in that same direction. But really, then we've kind of created it bespoke really for each group we're working with. There's no kind of set way of doing things. Sometimes churches prefer have more of a kind of front-loaded first year and then more check-ins on the second year. But we can adapt that according to what the needs are of the church and what the hopes are really.
Next. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying thank you.
Good. Who's next? Okay, by the time you decide, there is another following question, of course, will be from Dan, is actually in the chat as well, is how does it financially, how does it cost the church to be able to do the different models of engagement?
So yeah, so the bronze is £1,000 a year, the silver is £2,000 a year, and then the gold is £3,500 a year. So the gold will cover any travel and those kind of costs as well. But it also includes all the resources, so you don't buy them extra. So for example, if you've got a church of 100 people, we then give everybody in the church a copy of the Sharing Jesus book as part of that process. And if you've got a team who are going to be looking at evangelism, we've written about 15 different booklets. We give each of them a copy of the booklet to use and to think through. So the idea is that that's the fee you pay, and there's no more money on top of that. That gives you everything you need to have, really. Yeah, that makes sense.
So who would like to ask a question? Go ahead, Angel.
Hiya. Would there be a list of churches that have partnered with you that we could pick their brain to see what they thought was the positives or negatives of your training?
Yeah, the best people to go to would be the two Baptist churches in London we've gone through so far have been Black Horse Road Baptist Church.
Okay, I know them, yes.
Yes, they would give you an idea. And then Teddington Baptist Church, but the minister moved on halfway through. But if you ask the deacons there, they would let you know how they've gone there.
Thank you.
Other churches too, fine. There's a Methodist church and a Free Church and the Elim Church. I can give you the contacts for if you want to. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy.
Yeah, no worries.
Who's next? So, William, go ahead.
Thank you. Andy, thank you so much. Great ideas. Is it feasible for two smaller churches to join together and then work it that way, especially, financially as well?
Yeah. Up for that. Yeah. I mean, we'd love to do that. So I think, it's been really encouraging seeing some smaller churches really help this to be a kind of thing to help them move forward. So yeah, very happy to do that. Presume they're kind of fairly local, not kind of the end of the country, but yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent. Who's next?
Hannah, you've got the PowerPoint. So have you share the PowerPoint with Battersea Chapel Church?
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
I used to be in the London City Mission for 29 years. Awesome. I'm no longer with them, but they do something similar of networking and training churches in evangelism in London. So my question is, how different is your approach to theirs? Because it seems almost a replica.
Yeah, I think it's slightly different. I think so. For example, we would recommend some of the resources at times. So, for example, if you wanted to reach Muslims, I'm not the expert at that, but they've got a great resource at how to reach Muslims. So I would then say this is the resource you need to use from these guys rather than us trying to do it, and we can help you do that. So those kind of things I would say there are other specialists out there. So if you had a specific heart for a certain issue, then we'd then work actually who might be the best people to come and help you with that going forward as well. I think it is slightly different. I think it's their stuff's brilliant, and I work with Carl Knightley and London Mission on a whole variety of different things, and they are great guys and great stuff. I don't think they offer this kind of as a package, and I think what's a bit unique about it is the holistic sense of the whole thing. So it isn't just about evangelism, because I think the danger is we get passionate people out in the streets doing stuff. We don't really think them through, well, how do we welcome them into the church community? And actually, how do we have to shift the culture of the church to become more welcoming in the first place? So those kind of things that I think are probably slightly different emphasis for us. And that is a 2-year kind of slow burn, trying to do everything in one go. But London City Mission are brilliant, and they've got some great resources, and I wholeheartedly recommend them. So
brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent. Who's next? Please unmute yourself, Ben. Well, Andy, there is one of the things that it comes into the mind of a lot of church leaders is that what after would be the outcome, something like, oh, our church will have more people. What is actually we after in terms of such a program, in the sense of when a church decide, oh, we're going to put investment in helping us, what is the realistic expectation out there?
First of all, people come to faith, and every church so far that's happened. So we want to see that happen. People getting baptized as well. That'd be our kind of one thing, being good Baptists. There you go. The second thing is, I think, just the importance of actually that kind of cultural shift, so that the whole church begins to work out. Oh, actually, I haven't got to be like the pastor. I haven't got to be like this. I can be who I am, but I can look at how I can share my faith. So that kind of cultural change. And thirdly, I think lots of the things we introduced during the year is about really thinking intentionally and strategically about what you're trying to do. So what we discovered is that after 2 years, the language that we often employ has become part of the language of the church. So, for example, when we're doing events, we will have different type of events. Some will be a party event, and some might be a presentation event. So, a party event might not have a sermon or a testimony, but it's some way of engaging with the community. Then a presentation event is a presentation of the gospel. So actually understanding what you're doing, what the events are, that kind of language then seeps through, so that when you're thinking about your community, people then know which friends to invite to which things at which times, because they're aware of kind of that discernment process takes place. So it'd be the kind of 3 things I'd hope for, that people come into faith. It'd be that kind of cultural change, and then some of the strategic kind of organizational stuff seeps through into the local church and becomes part of their DNA going forwards.
So, I mean, if anyone wanted to ask questions, let me know, because I always have a lot of questions. So I don't want to take your time, but at the same time, it's very valuable time to ask questions. So let me know. But Andy, so one of the issues is that could it be a successful outcome that even though after 2 years we get 2 people, but our church, it changed? Like, is it the target exactly? Because I used to do a lot of street evangelism in my pastorate time. And to be honest, in the first 2 years, you get nothing. And then after the years later, continuous, because the culture changed within the church. So I want to get your feeling from the different churches that you, hopefully you had many years now after starting this program specifically, and the impact that it's a long term rather than short term.
I mean, there's been a couple of churches that were thinking, do we actually have a future or not? One of the churches over in the West Country was thinking, do we give up or do we keep going? This is their last go, really. So, well, down to about 20, 25 people. Do we close the church or do we keep going? And they're now thriving. They've now got a full-time children's and youth worker, and it's been a great story of what God's done there. So it's funny because you can't always predict what's going to happen, because sometimes God does something, you think, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So but the whole thing is partly a whole thing has to be a prayerful discernment of what is God speaking to us as a congregation about, and help you try and discern that. And for me, it isn't about we want people to come to faith for sure, but it is about that kind of that setting you up for the next 5 years, 10 years ahead, really. So over 2 years, then you can begin that cultural change. So even those prompt cards, such a simple thing. When you do that every week, and begin to get testimony most weeks, people are stepping out their comfort zone and sharing their faith in some way, you begin to see the whole kind of culture of the church move forward. So those are the kind of practical things that make a massive difference. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone would like to ask a question before I ask another one? Well, I have another question that I think is very important for church leaders, that as they think of where to go from here. Most of the time, when pastors look into a great model that they can apply, they struggle when they look into their own church. How can I get people motivated? Obviously, with the concept that you're not going to do it for them, you are actually empower them to do and change their culture. What is the greatest challenge of motivating people in doing this? Or if you have an experience of church that actually, while the leaders were very discouraged in the beginning, eventually through your coaching, they managed to motivate their people?
Yeah, that happens all the time. I think often you don't get the whole church on board straight away. You get a percentage of the church on board. And so if you can get the 15, 20% who are keen, that can move through the whole church over the 2 years. And so part of it, I think, is by storytelling, is as you share stories of what God's doing, people go, oh, wow, God is still at work. Oh, God still can do some things. I think some people feel that almost they've tried everything before and it hasn't worked, so why bother trying again? And I think by being a 2-year journey, you can have some little wins quite early on, which can begin to kind of shift people's minds of what is possible. And none of it really is rocket science, but it's just 25 years of doing this kind of thing and helping churches to kind of think it through, really. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question again. Just like, yeah, I think if you get the minority, a group who are in church who are up for it, then it will gradually filter through the church. And it's then working out how the content you're sharing. One of the things we do is we've created some slides and some stats and some videos which you can show every month. I guess the other thing that happens in church life is we come in for a day, brilliant, and over the next 3 months you can kind of drift off the mission again. So having something each month, which is a moment to kind of remember actually what is God doing and have a bit of teaching, can be helpful. So the videos, like 2-minute long videos, helping you talk about how you can share your faith, alongside a stat on what some of the stats are right now from people like the Evangelical Alliance on people finding faith. So it's kind of a stat, a bit of a story, then a little short video, so you can keep it on the dial, so that even when we're not there every single week, you can keep that being a focus for the church. So those things really do shift the kind of culture and do begin to, I guess, spread that load wider across the church. And we've often found that people on the fringe have kind of found it a place to become more involved because they see what God's doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. We have a very baptistic question here. Maybe Roger Martin, just go ahead instead of having it in the chairs, in the chat.
Yeah, so I asked initially in the chat because there's a lot going on in the church office around me. No, don't apologize, guys. So I was just kind of asking in terms of part of the discernment process, Andy, whether you kind of come along and do a sort of a presentation to the church without expectation that the church will necessarily say yes, but just to give a bit more of a rounded explanation and example. Yeah, very happy to do that. Yeah, very happy to do that. So normally we have a kind of it takes often a bit of while building trust, because actually you kind of think, who are you guys coming in and what are you going to do and how are you going to try and do A, B, and C? So our heart is to serve the local church and to really see evangelism mission become more central. But it isn't about us dictating, it really is about discerning what is God doing through you guys and how you become, how can we best resource that really. So yeah, if I have to come and do a kind of a meet and greet and to see if it sticks or not, and that's very cool. And very happy, normally what we do is do like a half an hour initial call with the leadership team just to begin to explore it. But if we're interested in more than that, we can do that as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if we don't have any questions, so we thank you so much, Andy. This has been inspiring, and it's wonderful that we're going to have your details in the website and this recording, and our pastors can always reach out to you directly. I also want to say that if finance is an issue for your church, do let me know. We can always find ways to help you raise that fund. There is fund somewhere we can help you. Just don't let the finance to be an issue. Just reflect on your church and see what the Lord is leading you, and we'll take it from there. So bless you all. Thank you for making the time, and may the Lord continue to bless your weekend. All right. Bye, everyone.